you know how badly Europe has been damaged by the war. I'm writing to tell you how things look from a student's point of view. This room of mine where I'm sitting is comfortable enough. I have a few books, but the paper shortage is still pretty bad, and an electric stove when there is any electricity to make it work. And I am one of the lucky ones. But outside the window, you can see the ruins of my neighbors' houses exactly as they were on the last day of the war. You must have heard how our communications were smashed, our schools destroyed, our teachers killed. Yet, at danger of death, we organized relief, held underground schools, and took an active part in the fighting. But the world around us seemed to have become a hopeless ruin. Well, I suppose one's own problems always seem the worst, and on the other side of the world, things must have been just as bad.
Yes, we in the Orient have had plenty of troubles. You see, when the war ended, many of our cities were in flames, and some of our college buildings were used as strong points. In fact, it's true to say that a great cry of need went up from all the young people in Asia and in Europe as well.
To meet this need, UNESCO was established as an agency of the United Nations, and one of its tasks is to rebuild the educational systems shattered by the war. UNESCO encourages voluntary organizations to gather in money and supplies, sparking their efforts by letting them know what to send and where the need is greatest. In its broader educational tasks, UNESCO is trying to help the millions of people, half the world in fact, who cannot read or write. Projects are already getting underway in China, Africa, and Haiti to teach a simplified written language to people in fields and villages. Thus, the means of a better life is beginning to reach the hands of the people, and with it, the knowledge of how to avoid sickness, how to plow better and reap more. In all the needy areas of the world, UNESCO is helping the voluntary organizations provide the tools of education. From New York warehouses goes communications equipment, still needed to reestablish radio broadcast links. Short-wave sets to build up international reception. Reproductions of art masterpieces to equip schools hastily rebuilt since the war. Microfilm enables education and research to go forward more quickly. Motion picture projectors open new windows onto a world cut off from millions by 10 years of war and chaos. Thousands of books help to fill the gap created when all peaceful study was closed to the students of half the world. During the war, students in all the free nations formed a great international organization of their own, World Student Relief, to aid their fellow students who had suffered more than they. Its American branch, the World Student Service Fund, links together the students on every American campus in a cooperative effort to help those in greatest need. Though the war is past, its effects are still branded on the lives of millions of people. We have been able to help only a few, whose letters in a score of languages reach the offices of the fund. Take this one from Aphrodite Sansalaou, a girl student in Athens.
We students in Greece were hit as badly by the war as any in Europe. Remember, it took 2,000 years to make these ruins, a few hours for this. Many of the children can't remember when they really had enough to eat. They seem happy enough, but they get tired so quickly. I myself was always tired and listless, needing to lie down and rest. I really felt I couldn't go on. Then I got to hear of the new university clinic, and I decided to go there. The doctor told me that the X-ray plates were a gift from students and others in Canada. They didn't know me, those students, but I felt they were very close just then. The X-ray took only a few minutes, and later the doctor explained that my tiredness was due to what he called an incipient case of tuberculosis. I must have lots of rest and sunshine. But of course I had no money to take a vacation in the country. So I thought I would see if World Student Relief could help in a case like mine. I was welcomed by Mrs. Elmendorf, the director's wife, who asked about my case. And then, surprisingly soon, I found myself on a bus, traveling to Moni Pendeli, the rest camp which World Student Relief has built outside Athens. The camp is up in the mountains, set among pine and olive trees, and the girls showed me to the tent where I was to live for the summer. All our meals were out of doors, and what meals! I hadn't eaten so well since I was a kid. So the summer passed, and I went back to Athens, feeling full of energy and eager to join the club which the Pendeli girls had formed for social work in the bombed-out parts of the city. Life had really begun again.
Well, Aphrodite was luckier than most of her friends, who never get as far as Arresto. I am in charge of the International Sanatorium at Leysin in Switzerland, which has been taking care of just a small fraction of Europe's tubercular students. I can tell you, these case histories don't make pretty reading. They add up to hundreds of years lost in hospitals, years which could have been spent doing all that so tragically needs to be done. Take this young fellow, for instance, Slavko Molnar. He was actually training to be a doctor, but it may be 5 years before he can start curing other people. If there were time, I'd tell you what I saw in Austria a few weeks ago. There, the TB rate is 10 times what it was in '39. And don't forget, the incidence of tuberculosis is still increasing. This view may be nice for the patients to look at, but scenery won't cure TB. It's going to take more medicines, more X-ray plates, more food, more clothing, before we can begin to beat this problem.
Don't forget us here in China, because we seem far away. 各位，请不要想，我要和美国朋友讲几句话。We're getting back on our feet too, but it's a long pull. The inflation, for instance. Nowadays, the students bring sacks of rice with them to pay their tuition because its value doesn't change, unlike money. This inflation hit us just when many of us had ended the long trek back from the interior. All along the way, we students had set up outdoor schools for the small children. But you may imagine there wasn't much time for learning ourselves. And back of all this are the age-old problems China has always faced. The dependence on manpower, on back-breaking, wasteful toil that modern knowledge could do away with. While men still sweat to haul barges up the Yangtze Rapids, or women labor at the plow, it is a reproach to us that we have not spread this new knowledge far enough. That is why we toil away at our work. Here is an entrance examination from the secondary schools into college. Of all the students you see, 9 out of 10 will fail, simply because there aren't any places for them in the universities. At the same time, we mustn't lose touch with life in the villages where most of our 450 million people still live. They think of the young students as a symbol of awakening and resistance to corruption. They say that they are like the lotus flower, which is grown out of the mud, but is as pure and lovely as any flower can be. Our tools are perilously few, but even more precious than the tools is the spirit of learning itself.
Yes, in a way, that has been our experience too. We have a place up here in the French Alps. Come along with me, I'll show it to you. That's not only a rest home, but also a meeting ground for students of all nationalities. We are heading for Mont Blanc now. There it is. And at the foot is this place of ours. It is called the Chalet des Étudiants. There is a load of food supplies on the truck sent on by care from friends in North America. And the people with us who have been in concentration camps, like Jules Breton here, still look at it pretty hungrily. Many of the fellows are not up to the strain of continuous work, but we have plenty of discussions on world affairs, I can tell you. This is a good place to get back to normal, for remember that many of us still live in streets that look like this. Outside on the terrace, our agricultural planners are busy. They have a scheme for putting the mountain slopes to better use. Maybe their plans won't all get carried out, but they are beginning to learn how to understand and work with people of other nations. Perhaps in this way, we students can help to break down those barriers that seem to be hedging us in like the mountains themselves.
I would like to sum up by giving you a short picture of life here in a typical European university. This is Wrocław in Poland. You may wonder why we are so busy mimeographing instead of studying. These are actually textbooks we are turning out on paper and machines sent us by World Student Relief. Practically our whole university library was destroyed when the Nazis overran Poland. But let's get to know some of the other students. Here is my friend Krystyna, who was a prisoner in the Oświęcim concentration camp. She's with Jacek, who is studying higher mathematics. They were both at the inaugural meeting which started our academic year. We all wore our thickest coats and shivered as we listened to the rector's speech. Stefan takes a geography pupil in the evening. After that, he has to go to the observatory for his astronomy studies, so you may imagine he doesn't like getting up early in the morning in a tiny room he shares with a friend. In between her classes, Krystyna works at a cooperative restaurant. It's not the most cheerful place in Wrocław. We never can get warm enough there in winter, but there is always good company. After lunch, we go back to our classes, cramming in as much work as we can, for there is a terrible need in Poland for skilled professional workers. Krystyna has an anatomy lecture and then attends an operation. Everything is crowded. There are 1,000 featured doctors training here in Wrocław. We are all working keenly and hard, but the difficulties are still tremendous.
Across the world, the universities are coming back to life. With the falling of the old walls, there has been swept away the narrow concept that they were built to house a privileged way of life and learning. In these new universities, the students are the builders too. Shoulder to shoulder with them stand fellow students who have traveled thousands of miles to work at their side, rebuilding not only with stone and steel, but with a determination to throw open the doors of knowledge to all who have the desire to learn. The doors are once more open. Despite the material help which the New World is giving through its programs of relief and reconstruction, leadership can come only from the peoples of Asia and Europe themselves. Their lot is still hard, their need critical. But it is these men and women who build the new walls, or shiver in unheated rooms, or wait their turn for a moment at the microscope, who are the future of their nations. The artists, teachers, editors, and engineers who must reconstruct a world. How then is the future to be read in these young faces? Will faith and constructive efforts sicken even before they have taken root? The answer can come only from the people themselves. The Charter of UNESCO declares, since wars begin in the minds of men, it is in the minds of men that the defenses of peace must be constructed. Peace must therefore be founded, if it is not to fail, on the intellectual and moral solidarity of mankind.
Well, what do you think of that?
Oh,
How are things in Austria
Was it
now?
like that when you were
Are
there?
those the kind of problems they have?
Well, look at it. Is it a fair picture?
A fair picture. You think this is just a picture, a story you have been watching on the screen. No, my friend, it's real all right, as real as life. The life I have been leading over there and thousands of others just like me. And don't think of yourselves just as a movie audience, like audiences in the movie theaters. We have got to give up this idea of being spectators and realize that it's our own business what's happening over there. If we are going to succeed, let's all have a part in that success, each doing what we can. But if we fail, and don't any of you forget it, we shall all share in that failure together. That's why we can't afford to fail, any of us.